Right, this is Dennis Wing with your Friday Rhythm Games. A few weeks ago I posted a video on varying the amount of swing from being the third part of a triplet, which was my DAW called it 100%, to 0%, which is straight eighth notes, and played around with different gradations of swing, and got positive feedback on that video. And then I remembered that there was an article in New Scientist that was about a physicist who measured the amount of swing and how it varied with different drummers. Now you can find, and it's really fascinating. This video is going to go into detail about how to improve your swing feel by exploring different gradations of swing the way the masters do it. So stick around for this, but I'm going to give you some background first. Now you can find the New Scientist article if you Google New Scientist, all that jazz, Mick Hamer, but it only lets you read a paragraph or two and then asks you to subscribe. So I'm not going to try and infringe on any copyright. I did write to Mick Hamer like a few years ago, and he actually sent me the full article, and I summarized it, and I already know that this has been summarized in another video by composer David Bruce. He summarized it in a great video, and so my doing so is nothing new, and I'm going to put a link to that video underneath. He goes into other stuff too, but I'm going to go right to the point and try and summarize from my notes that I took. Alright, so this is the physicist's name is Anders Freiberg, and he analyzed 4 drummers: Tony Williams, Jack DeJohnette, Adam Nussbaum, and Jeff Tain Watts. And he discovered they all have different swing ratios. And then he also discovered that swing, the amount of swing varied in terms of tempo. The only true 2-to-1 ratio, and by the way, they're calling 2-to-1 meaning an actual triplet, where if you're playing the first and third part of the triplet, then 2-to-1 means like the first note is twice as long as the second note. So that's what that means. 2-to-1 means a triplet relationship. That was only true for 200 beats a minute, and then slower tempos like 120 was more like 2.5-to-1, or even slower than that. The drummers could go to 3-to-1, which is like a 16th note, like 3/16 tied together to 1/16. And then when it got really fast, it went to almost 1-to-1, like almost straight eighths. So what I did is I took those ratios and plugged them in and programmed the DAW to play back them. And then I did something very interesting. I'll show you in a minute. I synchronized my offbeats to the offbeats of the drummer, which I'm going to get into it in a minute, so just stick around on this. I'm getting ahead of myself. And so that's the first 2 things. The third thing was that the soloists tend to lag behind the beat, which matches a historic tendency of slave songs from a book from 1867, and in the foreword it says that they were often, quote, sung just a trifle behind the time. The soloist, number 4, the soloists were able to synchronize with drummers. More on this later. They were, quote, able to synchronize their internal clocks every few beats, so you often don't realize that the soloist is lagging. There's more on this later, because this guy Freiberg got criticized for having such a small sample size. He only sampled 4 drummers, and then later this guy called Christian Dittmar confirmed all his findings, and Dittmar's article is available online right now. They estimated the swing ratios of cymbals, the drummer's cymbal. So just Google, ride cymbal swing ratios, Christian Dittmar, and you'll find that. So the two papers support each other, and the key takeaways for both articles is that swing isn't one fixed rhythm, it's a continuum. And the biggest myth is that swing is one exact formula, like 2-to-1. But really, you could have like 1-to-1. Straight A's can be considered swing when it's near 1-to-1. If the tempos are super fast, that's what happens. You could have 1.5-to-1, which is the fourth partial of a quintuplet. You could have 2-to-1, like we talked about, which is the third partial of a triplet. You'd have 2.5-to-1, which is the same as 5-to-2, which is breaking the bar into 7 parts, and you have 5-to-2. And you have 3-to-1, which is 16ths, and also there's a 3.5-to-1, which is the same as 7-to-2. So you have to break the bar into 9 pieces, and I've done all that, and I'm going to play along to show you all these different things, what they sound like. But just to give you a sense of like what the difference between 1.5-to-1 is versus 2-to-1, for example, this is all one bar, and I just wrote out the syllables in conical. Like that's all one bar. If I wrote, this one is 6 groups of 5, and this one is 10 groups of 3. Both of them add up to 30. I just want a common denominator. So what this shows you is, if you hit, this is all one beat. So if you hit the one beat, and then you hit the 4th out of 5 partials, that's 3-to-2, which is the same as 1.5-to-1. So that X right there shows where the swung 8th note occurs within the bar, and then this X means the next bar, beginning of the next bar. And then the next line would be 2-to-1 ratio, like an exact triplet. Like the space that this note takes up is exactly twice what this one is. And on this one, it's 3-to-2. Alright? So as you could see, like within one beat, it's not a big distance. And, can you really hear that? Well, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, it's a huge influence in the feel, So that's number one. Swing is not one fixed rhythm. Number two, swing changes with tempo, as we just talked about. Number three, different musicians swing differently, and there's no correct feel. Because, like Tony Williams tended toward larger swing ratios, Jack DeJohnette would vary it up based on whatever he was playing. And people like Billy Higgins and Elvin Jones showed strong tempo-dependent changes, whereas some drummers stay more consistent across tempos. So swing is partly personality and style, not just math. And then 4, swing is microtiming, not just subdivision. The ratio between long and short is only part of the story. Other factors are like placement behind or ahead of the beat, articulation, accents, note length, and interaction with other players. Number 5, soloists and drummers do not place notes in the same way. We're going to get into this in a big way in a little while. So the researchers found that the soloist often lags behind the drummer, and delays can be around 100 milliseconds, but they synchronize on the short offbeat notes. We're going to look at that in a big way. So the band feels tight even though the soloist sounds laid back. That's a big thing in my opinion. Humans prefer nuanced swing, not rigid mechanical swing. That probably goes without saying. Drummers have extraordinary micro-timing control. It's not random. It's very deliberate and expressive. And automated research confirmed all of the newer research confirms the older research. So what I did was program my DAW and play with laid back phrasing, not in a loose way but in a prescribed way. I will show you now. So this diagram shows what Freiberg originally discovered was that pretty consistently among all the different drummers was a continuum on which the swing amount decreased as the tempo increased, in a pretty straight line too. So what I did was choose different tempos and programmed my DAW to make the cymbal swing in those proportions. Like I chose a tempo of 85 beats a minute, and I did 3.5-to-1, the swing ratio of the cymbal. And then I did 120 at 3-to-1, and 170 at 2.5, and then 215 at 2-to-1, and then 260, I think, 1.5-to-1, and then 300 1-to-1. And not only that, but I programmed my DAW in such a way so that I would play laid back lines against that, not randomly but mathematically. I will show you. This diagram right here shows that the studies found that the offbeats, like the swung eighth notes played by the soloist, they have an example from Freddie Hubbard, like the swung eighth note here, which is written as straight eighths, is actually synchronizing with where the drummer places their ride cymbal, but the quote on the beat notes fall after the beat. So the drummer's swing ratio is much larger, like from here to here the swing ratio is much larger than the ratio from here to here. And here's another way of looking at it. This is from one of Freddie Hubbard's solos. Like all these notes in pink are the swung eighth notes that synchronize with where the drummer is placing their swung eighth note, but all these green notes are behind the beat, like all of them. So it gives a laid back feel, but it's still in sync with the drummer. So it accomplishes two things at once. It's being tight and loose at the same time, kind of. So what I did was I took a 2-to-1 ratio, because it says in the article that soloists rarely exceed a 2-to-1 ratio no matter what the tempo, which resonated with me, by the way, because when I tried to match the drummer, like at 120 the drummer's ratio is 3-to-1, so the drummer's actually playing like 16th, like the last 16th of each beat instead of the third triplet, and when I matched that it felt like too much swing, like the following. And so what I did was use the MIDI in the DAW to create a 2-to-1 ratio, and then I manually moved it to match the swung eighth note would line up with the drummer's swung eighth note, and that's where the pattern would start, and then that would make the one beat later. It's hard to explain without visual, so let me give you a visual now. We're going to take 2.5 to 1 as our example, which is at 170. In order to get 2.5 to 1, which is the same as 5 to 2, I had to program the DAW to divide the beat into 7 parts, and there's the 5 parts right there, and there's the 2 parts. And then what I did was, on a separate track, program triplets. These are exact the first and third partials of each triplet of each beat, but it's offset so that the third part of the triplet, if you can see right here, the third part of the triplet is going to match where the sixth part of the septuplet is going to start. In other words, like, let's zoom in on this a little. This is the sixth part of the septuplet, the 2-to-1 swing ratio. But because I set this track to triplets, then this beat is offset. It's like late. And so the idea is that I would keep true to a regular triplet feel, but synchronize the offbeats like the article said, and just to see what it sounds like. So I played along with that, with this track that would sound like this. And tried to the best of my ability to get it, as close to that as possible. And I like the effect. I think it's laid back. And I only did that for the tempos up until 2 to 1, which is 2:15. The tempo I chose was 2:15. After that, it was when it went to 1.5 to 1. I just tried to match the 1.5 to 1, and then when it got up to 1 to 1, which by the way I didn't do exactly 1 to 1. I did almost. I offset it by a tiny bit, so it was almost 1 to 1 when we got to 300 beats per minute. And I didn't use the triplet thing. I just played to the hi-hat, to the ride cymbal, if that makes any sense. Anyway, so just listen to the results of it. I think it's fascinating. So in the end, I created a template by which I could keep a 2-to-1 swing feel in my own playing and align with where the drummer was placing, let's call it his swung eighth note, and then that would make my lines feel locked in with the drummer and behind the beat at the same time. And I like it. I love the effect of it, and I invite you to explore the same thing. So at the end of the video, I put those same varied cymbal beats at varying tempos for you to play along with, to see if you can sync up, you know, the swung eighth note with the drummer and still play in a laid-back fashion like that. So let me know how you make out. Let me know whether this all made sense or not, and most importantly, let me know if this can help or did help or will have helped your swing feel.